Hello YouTube. Good morning, afternoon, whatever it may be, wherever you may be. This will be part 2 of our video on restoration of knives and rebuilding, refurbishment, whatever you want to call it, and a little bit of the different of preserving a knife and actually going through one and redoing it. Now, to refresh your memory, let me bring this up here. This is the knife in question. This belongs to one of the ladies on Knife Nation, Nikki. This was her grandfather's knife. And I stressed in the first video that the first thing we want to do is get with our customer, client, or if it's your own knife, decide for yourself, what do you want to do? Do you want to restore this knife? Do you want to just preserve all the memories? A mix of both, or what do you want to do? And then we're going to kind of show both routes, if you will. So this is a neat knife. It's a good teaching tool for that. So on this side, I haven't done anything. And no, I haven't been quite that lazy, guys. I've actually been doing some work on this. The first thing you'll notice is that, hey, let me get it back up here again. I did go ahead and straighten this guard. When I looked at it, I realized, and let me get behind the camera, I'm kind of a one-man operation, so please forgive me. I realized that instead of one big bend, that if I straightened it might break, it was actually two small compound bends. And so I decided, yes, I can straighten that, just kind of a judgment call from doing it for a lot of years. So I went ahead and straightened it. Now, in discussing with Nikki what she wanted in this knife, she wants to use it. So I said, well, that's telling me that rather than just preserving this, you want to restore it. And she said, yes, that's exactly what I want. So we talked it over, and I made some more in-depth inquiries, if you will. And guys, if you're doing this, communicate with your client, have your client communicate back with you, and make sure above all that you understand what they are saying, not what you're hearing, but understand what they are saying. Now in this case, I'm going to be leaving little things from her grandfather. There'll be little places on here that she can look at and remember and know the heritage of this knife, where it came from, and not take those things out. But we're going to turn this into a working tool, and as such, I'm going to give her every advantage with it that I can. So on this side, I have been doing some work, and what I've done here is preliminary sanding on the blade. This is not done, but what I've found is if I try to do the entire sanding operation all at once, that invariably you're going to miss stuff. So what I do is I remove any of the really deep bad scratches, and if you can see right there on the point, this is kind of what the whole thing looked like on the other side. The other side was actually worse than this side. And I took all those out, and then I went down through the grits and took it to a light polish so that you can see you know, where I need to hit it. Now I know where the other parts are that I need to hit. Did the same thing here and here on the back and on the end cap. And there's more work to do there. I may leave, there's a couple pits right here that are deep. I'll leave those, you know, our grandfather put them in there. The whole knife is going to be in really good shape. The leather on both sides is in good shape. I'm not going to mess with it, and we'll get to that in one of the videos on it, and how much you do, what you do, and how far you take that. A lot of that obviously depends on what condition it's in. And another place right here, you'll notice, let's see, the top rivet is just the way it left the factory. Now something happened to this bottom rivet, and this is another place I'm going to leave something of her grandfather's in it. At some point, for reasons unknown to us, that rivet came out, was knocked out, he pushed it, well, there's just no knowing. But at any rate, it was gone. So he used what a lot of us use in a situation like that, a nail. And it was protruding a little bit on each side. He had just kind of snipped it off, and that was good enough for him. Because she wants to use this and it would dig into your hand, I went ahead and smoothed it down. I could have put another nickel silver pin in there, which is what that is. But I thought, you know, that's one area of the legacy from him, so we're going to leave that. So that's where the knife is right now. Now I will go ahead, give this a finish sanding, and we're going to discuss that in a video, how you do that without washing out the lines. Now this knife, these lines are not razor sharp, crystal clear. You'll see that already, I hope, that they are somewhat blended. That's the way the knife was made. But here, they're not washed out anymore. In fact, they're maybe a little more crisp. When you're doing that, make sure that you use sanding blocks. If you put the sandpaper on these, you're going to wash those lines out, and the knife is going to look soft, fuzzy. It's not going to be anything like what left the factory. I create whatever I need, just little blocks. I file, I sand, I saw, whatever I need to do. I use paint brush handles. I use anything that will fit these contours. And flat pieces of wood for the flat. I start with the finest grit that I can start with. If there's just light surface scratches, I'll maybe start with 800, 1200 even, 1500. I don't want to create extra work by starting with a 340 or 220 each time, if that's what it takes, because and on this particular one I started with 340 because there's some pretty deep scratches in this. And then I work through the grits to get to this. Once I see where I need to concentrate any extra areas, I go back through them again. Only this time I make sure that I do each step long enough to take out the marks from the previous sandpaper. Otherwise, when you take it down and put it on the buffer, instead of popping out nice in a few seconds, you'll just bring out those lines. The buffer is your enemy. Remember that. The more you use a buffer, the worse this is going to look. Buffers will wash out lines, they blur, they blend. So literally this should be mirror polish. You take it to the buffer, about 2 strokes on each side to take the haze out from the last sanding. You can use Simichrome polish. Here's my poor long suffering. You can tell I've used this tube up. Now on the other side, where we haven't done anything, what are we going to do here? Because we're going to pretend for a minute that we're not going to do this. We're going to pretend here that she wants to leave this just like it is. This is the way it was. Everything here is just like it was. A lot of people will jump into this, and did I bring one out here? I didn't. I apologize. But they will take something like a rust eraser or a superfine emery cloth and start trying to sand the rust off. Now understand, if you do that, unless you can exactly match the finish that's on there, you're going to create another finish, and it's going to be either more polished or less polished than what was here. Either way, it's going to stand out. So what I like to do is take good old 3-in-1 oil or Liquid Ranch penetrating oil, WD-40. Everybody has their pet brand, any good oil. And just wipe this down first. That's the very first thing I would do. And we'll take just some 3-in-1 oil, because that's what I've used for 40 years and it seems to work fine. and we'll just see how much of this we can pull off just using that. Remember, in this case, we're not going to use this knife. It's going to be waxed, it's going to be put up, and we just want to stop any active rust. We want to get any crud off there. I like doing it this way because I can keep petroleum-based products off the leather. You know, there's oils that are good for leather, petroleum-based oils like 3-in-1, like penetrating oils. They're not good for leather. They'll take off the finish. They will damage the leather itself. So now we've given this a little rub down on this side, and this is really not too bad. If I wanted to preserve this, obviously I would do it more than I have, but we have just stopped any active rust that was there. I would take a Q-tip into these areas. I would take a chopstick with a cloth on the end of it. Whatever tool works. There's one spot right here that I would make sure, you want to make sure you get down in those spots. There's a term called spider rust, and it kind of just goes out from those. So you want to make sure you stop that. My next operation on this side would be to thoroughly clean that with acetone, isopropyl alcohol, something that's going to cut the oil off, but I want this surface completely clean, completely dry. Then to finish it, if you're going to use it, a light coat of oil. If you're not, if you're going to preserve it like that other side, then, and I'm not recommending any brands, I'm just showing you some things. Renaissance, it's used by the British Museum. It's really hard stuff, and I learned early on, don't put this on a real thick coat, and you let it dry, it is like iron. If you're going to use a knife, we've done some tests in the past just on blank steel, and no wax does very good for very long. You get it wet, you get salt water, you get anything on it, it'll pretty much eat through wax. But inside, what you're trying to do is keep oxygen off this blade. Rust is nothing but a very slow oxidation or burning, literally on fire, just really slow. So if I can keep oxygen away from this, I'm going to prevent rust. So that you can buy these at Home Depot. This is just a good hard finishing floor wax. It's very durable. It's meant to go on floors or butcher blocks wax. Any of those will preserve the knife. On leather, I tend to leave the leather alone if I can. If you put the wax on there, it's going to seal the leather with whatever moisture is in it. At that point, the leather can't breathe. That's one thing. Number two, if you get it down in between where these spacers are, you're going to have these white blobs that are really hard to get out. Number three, if the leather's in good shape, and it's been in good shape for all those years, however it's been stored or wherever it is, I tend to leave it alone, not mess with it a whole lot. And on this side, I really won't do much. You can wax it. That's your judgment call. You can use leather preservatives. There are as many as you can think of. I would use a hard one if I was going to use that. I wouldn't use a liquid or something that soaks in water repellent. Research them, find out the aluminum on front and back, the blade once it's polished. You can tune it up with Simichrome, with Flitz, with any metal polish like that will do good, and you're not going to have to worry about scratching it. After you're done with that, oil on the blade, and now we're talking about using a knife. When you're done using your blade, put some oil. I usually put it on a rag. I wipe the blade down with it on both sides, and then I wipe it off one time. Now, why do I do that? Well, you don't want to just gob oil on here and leave it. And there's an old saying that I made up years ago, and it's oil collects dust, dust collects moisture, and moisture collects rust. So you don't want a big heavy coat that dust is going to fall in, get embedded in, because that dust is going to soak the moisture out of the air, and then you're going to have rusty lines on your knife. So that's pretty much it for this video. The next video I'm going to show it completely finished, and we will go from there and have a sheath for it too of some sort, and be ready to use as a using tool again. And I applaud her decision. She wants to use it and then at some point pass it on to, you know, her child. So it's an ongoing legacy. I'm going to do my part in it. She's going to do her part. Her grandfather's done his part, and hopefully, if it's well cared for 100 years from now, it'll still be around and still telling everybody's story. And I think that's a lot of fun, and I think it's a fun thing to do. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer them. The best thing to do is if you would join Knife Nation. You could leave the comments there, and I can give you a much more in-depth answer than trying to catch them on YouTube. You don't have to, or I'm not saying I'll do that or whatever. Just it's a nice bunch of folks. We have a lot of fun. If you enjoy it, take a look, and the link will be down in the bottom. So that's it for this time. Take it easy. I hope you enjoyed it. And basically this is where we're at. Next time you see this, it will be totally finished. So take it easy, YouTube, and we'll talk to you later.